and welcome to Online PTE. My name is Jasmine and I'm one of the teachers at Turner English. This lesson we will focus on Module 1 Speaking, Task 4 Retell Lecture. Have you pen and paper handy for note taking? Have you downloaded your lecture notes? Okay, so let's get started. Retell Lecture is the fourth part of your speaking in PTE exam, and we are going to take a look at the task overview. Turn to the first page of your worksheets and we are going to review the task. What is Retell Lecture? In Retell Lecture, after listening to a lecture, you need to retell that lecture in your own words in 40 seconds. So the length of the lecture is anything between 60 seconds to 90 seconds. So minimum maximum is like 60 seconds to 90 seconds. And then after listening to this lecture, you have 10 seconds to manage your notes if you take notes. And then you have speaking time. You have 40 seconds to retell that lecture. So your speaking is actually happening in 40 seconds and your task will be marked according to the marking scheme of PTE for this particular item. The way that your speaking is marked and assessed is in 3 areas. The first area is content of your presentation, which is anything from 5 to 0. The second area of marking for Retell Lecture is pronunciation, which is again from 5 to 0. And the third one is your oral fluency, which is again from 5 to 0. So you can see that for these 3 areas of marking, the maximum score you may get is 5. And how it works? Content of your presentation is in fact the content that you can get from the lecture and retell it. Let's say, for example, if you can cover the main points of the lecture with some supporting ideas, so for sure in content it is 5. If you can get some points of the lecture, not that much of supporting ideas, so it may not be 5, and it goes down until 0. Pronunciation is how to say, how to pronounce a word correctly with a correct pattern. And your oral fluency means the ability to make sentences without hesitation. So when you can make sentences without hesitation, it means your oral fluency is acceptable, is okay. So these 3 areas of marking are effective for Retell Lecture task. Now, let's take a look at the layout of our presentation and how do we need to present a well-structured and a well-organized lecture in this particular task. So, we would like to have 3 parts in our presentation. The first part is an overview. The second part is content. And the third part is either conclusion or implication. What is the overview or the opening or the introduction in Retell Lecture? In fact, the overview is just the title that you give to the lecture or the topic that you give to the lecture. Let's say, for example, the lecture was about. So it's as simple as saying the lecture was about. And then you put the topic. For example, the lecture was about global warming. The lecture was about environment pollution. And what is content of your presentation or content of your speaking? Content of the presentation is the point that you get from the lecture. Let's say, for example, if the given lecture addresses 3 to 4 points on a particular subject, that is the content of your presentation, and you need to put it together. And conclusion or implication, I put a star here because, of course, the first priority is content and then it is overview. So if you cannot manage the time for conclusion or implication, just leave it. If you can present a well-organized content, that's fine. But if you can look at the countdown timer on the screen and you see that, okay, you still have 5 seconds. So why not just say something as conclusion? Like, for example, in conclusion, this lecture, so in conclusion, this lecture was, and then what do we need here? We need an adjective. Maybe, for example, was very informative, or this lecture was very interesting. Something short, a sentence short like this, that can kind of summarize the whole point, or just with an adjective to describe the lecture. Now we are going to turn to page 2 of your worksheets, and we are going to go through the categories of lecture in task 4 Retell Lecture of your PTE Speaking. The first category is present narrative. So what is present narrative in Retell Lecture? Present narrative, as the name suggests, means the lecture is narrating something in present time. Let's take a look at the picture on page 2. And again, the other thing you need to know about Retell Lecture is that the tasks come with an image. Okay, so what is the significance of having an image in Retell Lecture? The significance is that by looking at the image, you can kind of get the content or the context of the presentation, and you can anticipate the type of vocabulary you may need to use in your presentation. Let's take a look at the first picture on page 2 of your worksheets. What does it show? Yes, it shows a polar bear. Yeah, it shows a polar bear and then the melting ice cap. So implicitly and explicitly, of course, it is suggesting a problem. What is the problem? The problem that we are all familiar with these days. It is global warming. Polar bear, this is like a very typical picture representing global warming. A polar bear looking hopelessly at melting ice cap means the problem is global warming. So we know that, okay, the lecture we are going to listen to is about global warming. But now, so the sample example here is, for example, global warming. But now, what is present narrative? Present narrative means the lecture is narrated in present time. And how can we know that it is a present narrative? How do we know that? Take a look at your the second page of your worksheet. First category, present narrative, sample topic, global warming, frequent grammar. So this is the grammar that tells us whether the lecture is made in past, present, or future. So what is the frequent grammar of a present narrative lecture? It is simple present, it is present perfect tense, and it is present continuous tense. All these like present tenses. So we know that we have these 3 main tenses in English: present, past, and future. So when it comes to present narrative, means explaining a problem in present time. So the main tenses are either simple present tense or present perfect or present continuous tense. Now, okay, could you please read the sample lecture below this image and try to highlight the grammar related to present narrative? You will have 1 minute for this part. Okay, so done? Let's take a look at it together. A healthy and a stable climate underpins all life on Earth. What is it? Underpins. What is the tense? Simple present. Supporting nature and people alike. Our lives depend on another simple tense, simple present tense, on the natural environment to deliver the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the clothes we wear. So all these verbs are in simple present time. And the products that create jobs and economic security. Our climate is now rapidly changing. present continuous, verb plus ing, and threatening the people, animals, and places we love. So this suggests that the lecture is going to be all in the present, in the current time. And what is the significance of knowing the grammar? You will be able to put your presentation in the correct grammatical structure. And the other thing is, when you are going to present your speaking, you do not have to think twice to decide on the grammar. You already unlock the grammatical structure. And this helps you to be more specific with the grammar as well. Okay? Okay, the second category of lecture in Retell Lecture is past narrative. Unlike present narrative that narrates an event in present time, past narrative, as the name suggests, is all about an event that happened in the past. For example, take a look at image 2 on page 2. What does it suggest? What do you see? Yes, this is the image of an old-fashioned city with tall buildings and smokes or pollution. So it suggests pollution in, for example, old times. So since the time is referring to past, it is past narrative. And how do we know that, for example, the given lecture is narrating something in the past? Again, by looking at the grammar. What is the frequent grammar in the past narrative? The frequent grammar is either simple past or past perfect tense or past continuous tense. So these are three of the most important grammatical tenses that suggest an event happened in the past. Now, don't look at the sample lecture text, just listen to me. And I want you to be more sensitive with the grammar, with the structure, okay? So I want you to take note of all past tenses that are made in the lecture. Don't look at the script, please, just listen to me. In the UK, the Industrial Revolution during the 18th and 19th centuries was based on the use of coal. Industries were often located in towns and cities, and together with the burning of coal in homes for domestic heat, urban air pollution levels often reached very high levels. During foggy conditions, pollution levels escalated and urban smog, smoke and fog were formed. How many past tense verbs you could get from this lecture? Okay, let's review the lecture one more time. In the UK, the Industrial Revolution during the 18th and the 19th was based on. So the first is was based on. Even, you know, the word 18th and 19th ring the bell, because we know that we are going to hear something about the past. Industries were often located, again, were located. And together with the burning of coal in homes for domestic heat, urban air pollution levels reached very high, simple past. During foggy conditions, pollution levels escalated and urban smog were formed. So the overall grammar is past narrative and the subject is air pollution. Okay, so now we are going to look at the third category of presentation together, which is problem solution category. So what is problem and solution? And this is number 3. As the name suggests, problem solution means you will listen to a lecture in which a problem is stated and then a solution is made. So you need to be aware that, and you need to know that in problem solution categories, you may have cause of a particular problem, and then the problem itself, and then the effect or the consequences of that problem, and then solution to that problem. So look, if this category has and includes all these 4 parts, mean it is like a very complete problem solution category. Otherwise, it's mainly problem and solution. And just know that whenever a problem is stated, the solution is also there. Okay? The solution will also be there. Now, Why it is important to, for example, know what is the cause and what are the causes of a particular problem, what are the consequences of that problem, and how about the solution? Because it is part of the content. You cannot ignore it. If it is there, you must be able to reflect it and to present it in your speaking. Okay, thank you. Now, take a look at the picture on page 3. Yes, what do you see? I hope the picture is clear enough for you. You can see a man standing in the middle of fish, great quantities of fish. So what does it suggest? Yes, it indicates a problem. And what is the problem? Fish extinction, maybe? Could be, yes. Overfishing could be another one. Yeah, and now the sample lecture, but for this one I don't want you to focus on grammar. I just want you to focus on key points of the lecture. Look at these 4 areas one more time. Cause of a problem, the problem itself, the consequences of that problem, and then the solution. So if we are going to, let's for example illustrate it, we say we have a problem here. So what has caused this problem, and what are the effects or the consequences of this problem, and now what is the solution? Okay, so this is maybe the illustration. I want you just listen and focus on these 4 areas. Can you get these 4 parts in this lecture or no? Okay, let's listen. Overfishing is not an automatic outcome of capturing fish. Indeed, some level of harvest on pretty much any type of fish can be undertaken providing the proper management is in place. The causes of overfishing are complex and varied, and therefore so are the solutions. Generally, overfishing takes place when short-term economic considerations are the only motivation of a fishery, and when the management structure does not account for illegal, unregulated, or unreported fishing. Overfishing can, however, take place even in situations where the management seems strong. One solution is the implementation of marine protected areas that allow for some portion of the targeted fish stock to be completely protected from fishing. This is probably the most effective way of ensuring that overfishing cannot occur regardless of the root cause. Okay, now you have 30 seconds to manage your notes and look at your notes in relation to these 4 areas. Okay, so was there any cause? What was the problem? How about the consequences of the problem? What about the solution? Yes, the problem was overfishing. How about the cause of this problem? Lack of proper management or mismanagement was the cause of this problem. Did the lecture say anything about the consequences or effects of overfishing? No, there was no consequence, no effect, but the solution was there. What was the solution? The solution was implementing proper protection rules and regulations in order to protect marine ecosystem. So we had cause, we had problem, and we had solution. We didn't have this one. Okay, look, you don't have to use the exact words of lecture. What must be there is the content, not the exact words of the lecture. You have to retell the lecture, which means you should understand the content and retell it in your own words. Okay, even the words that I used were not taken from the lecture, they were my words. So you need to be doing the same. Don't worry if you are not using the exact words of the lecture. When you get the content, you can actually use your own words, and you need to do this, okay, to retell it in your own language. So far we have had a look at 3 areas of lecture. The first one was present narrative, the second one was past narrative, and the third one was a problem and solution narrative. Now we are going to take a look at number 4, and which is the last one as well. Number 4, which is a popular type of lecture, is sequential category. What is sequential category? Yes, as the name suggests, sequential category means the sequences of doing something, the sequences needed to do an action. Like, for example, how to set up a website. First, second, third. How to prepare for your PTE exam. First, second, third. So how to prepare for your PTE exam? To familiarize yourself with your test structure, to register at a registered coaching and training center, and then third, to study well on an organized plan. So this is sequential category, okay? Now, let's take a look at number 4 on page 3 of your worksheets. Look at this very famous and popular picture here. What does it suggest? Yes, recycling, we all know that. It symbolizes recycling and it shows recycling. By recycling, actually, we can protect the earth and the environment. So it's very significant. It's very important for us to recycle properly. But recycling has certain stages and has certain steps. So we need to be like consistent, and we need to follow the steps properly. Look, when it comes to sequential category, what is really important is I can say in most of the lectures with this category, there are 3 points. So step 1, step 2, and step 3. And you must present them in correct order. Okay, so you cannot jump from step 1 to step 3 and 2. No, you must present them in the correct order. And how do we know that? Look, when it says firstly, when you are listening to a lecture and suddenly the word firstly comes up, you should know that the secondly is also coming. And thirdly, look, sometimes if the first and the second steps are too long, you may not hear the third one. But I can say in most lectures, there are 3 steps in sequential category. So just be sensitive to the word firstly or initially or during the first stage or at the first step, and then you should know that it's a sequential category and you need to have a well-organized presentation for this one, following the steps in order. Okay, now again, don't look at the sample lecture, just listen to me and try to take note. We are going to know how many steps are mentioned in this lecture and what can we do in order to present it. Recycling is the process of converting waste materials into reusable materials and objects. It is an alternative to conventional waste disposal that can save material and help lower greenhouse gas emissions. These tips can help and make it easier to maximize the plastics to recycle. Firstly, learn what items and materials are accepted for recycling in your community. The only way to know what materials are accepted in your area is to check with your local recycling or solid waste facility. Secondly, recycle often and recycle right. In other words, once you know the rules, follow them. Okay, so how many steps and how many sequences you heard in the lecture? 2. Yes. So the content of this lecture was first, what is recycling, and step 1, step 2 for proper recycling. Okay, thank you. So far we have had a look at the test overview. What is a Retell Lecture task in PTE? Retell Lecture is part 4 of your speaking in PTE, and the tasks always come with an image. The image helps you to anticipate the vocabulary and to predict the content or the context of presentation. And then in every Retell Lecture, you will listen to a lecture which is like around 60 seconds to 90 seconds, sometimes 100 seconds, which is like the maximum time. And then after that, you have 10 seconds to finalize your notes and to manage your presentation. After these 10 seconds, you will actually hear a tone indicating that your speaking time is starting, and then your presentation time is 40 seconds. So these 40 seconds is the task which you are going to present in the form of a speaking, and that is going to be marked. There are 3 areas of marking in each Retell Lecture task. The first one is content of your presentation. The second one is your pronunciation, and the third one is your oral fluency. In order to get the maximum of the content, you need to maintain your concentration from the beginning to the end of the lecture and note-taking. Let me tell you something about note-taking. Most of the time, my students ask me, do we have to take notes? Well, I can't say you have to take notes. There's no such thing as you have to. Generally, what I found based on my experience as a PTE teacher, what I found is that there are 2 types of learners when it comes to note-taking. The first group of candidates, they can take note, and at the same time they can concentrate, they can focus on lecture, they can focus on the content from beginning to the end. So I can say kind of multitasking. They take notes and they concentrate as well. And there is a second category as well. The second group of candidates can concentrate very well. They have excellent concentration from beginning to the end, but they cannot take note at the same time. It really depends on your own learning strategy. I myself, I'm in the second category. I cannot take note at the same time and listen. I do one, which is listening. So I would suggest try both of them and see which one works for you. You may be in the first category, you may be in the second category, but by practicing, you will know your own learning strategy. If you are in the first category, like note-taking and concentrating, you should know some tips. So group 1 can take note and can concentrate. Group 2 can only concentrate, like me. So if you are in the first category, which means the students or the candidates who can take note and who can concentrate at the same time, you should know something. First of all, you need to use codes and abbreviations to take notes. You cannot write down everything because you cannot manage your time. Let's say, for example, pollution. That's enough. Education. Enough. Environment. Okay, so you do not need to write the whole world because you just need codes and abbreviations and symbols to refer to the context, and because you have already unlocked the context of your presentation, you know that this one stands for pollution, this one is for education. So the overall subject of your lecture is on education, is on environment, is on pollution. Okay, and the other thing is, yes, for this particular task, don't worry about your spelling, just write down, but your notes must be well organized, because after all, you are going to organize your notes and to present it in 40 seconds. So if you are in the first category, just practice note-taking on a regular basis, on a daily basis. You can practice with podcasts, you can practice with TED Talk lectures, just note-taking. Don't worry about anything, because note-taking requires regular practice. Okay, thank you. And look, the other thing that you need to know about your presentation in Retell Lecture is that we try to minimize self-correction in speaking. If you think, for example, you made a mistake, and if you think that, for example, the words that you said were not correct, just let it go and go to the next point, because you won't be able to manage the time unless you're okay with time management and you're just worried about that particular mistake that you made. But generally, we try to minimize self-correction and practice oral fluency, because after all, oral fluency is a big part of your marking criteria in this particular task. Okay, now what you need to know is you need to know your own learning strategy, which is very important, because I have both groups of students in my classes. So just try to figure out your own learning strategy by practicing on a regular basis. Again, TED Talk. I would definitely recommend TED Talk to all of you. Just you can browse the topics and choose the topic which is more interesting for you, but please make it a habit. Make it a regular practice every day, not once a week. Make it an everyday practice, because practice makes perfect. Okay, thank you. So just remember, persistency and consistency are the drivers to your success. So make sure you keep up with your course outline and you submit your assignments and homeworks on time. Your teachers are waiting for you. Bye for now.